After I retired, I bought a small cabin in the mountains, craving the quiet of the wilderness. Just 2 days later, my son called me. "I need your place as collateral. Sign these papers, or your grandson is going to lose his home." I didn't push back. I played the part of the submissive, accommodating father. But when he and a real estate agent arrived, they found a surprise waiting for them, a lesson in consequences that would change their lives forever. The phone rang at 6:30 in the morning. Too early for anything good. I fumbled for anything good. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand, my head still heavy from unpacking until midnight. Through the window, the dawn over the Rockies was just breaking, painting the peaks in shades of pink and gold, the very view that had drawn me here. My mountain cabin. My dream finally realized after 40 years of waiting. "Dad?" Travis's voice cracked over the speaker. "Dad, I need your help right now." I sat up instantly, sleep forgotten. My son never called this early, and he never used a tone like that. Desperate, breathless, like he'd been running. "What's wrong? Is Lucas okay?" My 10-year-old grandson. "You know how she is, Dad." Just the thought of something happening to that boy tightened my chest. "Lucas is fine. It's the house, Dad. The bank is moving to foreclose. We're losing everything." The words rushed out. "Joyce and we're behind on the mortgage. I've tried to fix it. I really have. But they won't listen. They gave us 10 days. Oh. This view had cost me $475,000. Every cent I'd saved was laid out before me. Mountains, pines, silence," I repeated. "Travis, how did it get this bad? Travis, how did it get this bad?" "There's no point in going over that now," he snapped. "Dad, I need your cabin as collateral. Just for a little while, I swear. If you sign the paperwork, we can negotiate with the bank. Otherwise, Lucas loses his home. Your grandson will be on the street." The world tilted. My cabin, the place I'd closed on 2 weeks ago, moved into 3 days ago, the place where, for the last 48 hours, I had finally been able to breathe. "Travis, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Why? There's no time. Look, I'm bringing an agent on the 17th who can handle this. Darren knows how to get it done fast. You have to trust me, okay? This is for Lucas." The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, watching the sun climb higher. "Trust me," the words echoed in my new living room. Boxes were still stacked against the walls, filled with the architectural sketches I'd collected over 40 years of restoring historic buildings across Colorado. 40 years. You know how she is, Dad. The restoration of the Brown Palace Hotel, the Molly Brown House, the preservation work on the state capitol. Every weekend, I'd drive into these mountains, looking at houses. He'd laugh. "You know how she is, Dad," dreaming of the day I could finally afford my own piece of the wilderness. And now, after only 2 days of real peace, my son needed it as collateral. I thought of Travis as a boy, eyes bright, full of questions. He used to sit on my job sites, asking about load-bearing walls and foundations. He'd wanted to be an architect too, until he changed his mind in college. College tuition. You know how she is, Dad. $120,000. The wedding with Joyce. $35,000. The down payment for their house in Denver 7 years ago. $25,000, which I never saw again. Lucas. I thought of Lucas. He was in 5th grade, loved comic books and wanted to grade, loved comic books and wanted to be a marine biologist, despite living in landlocked Colorado. He didn't deserve the stress of being homeless. My phone buzzed. A text from Travis. "I know this is a lot to ask, but you're the only one who can help us. Please, Dad." I looked around. Summit County, Breckenridge, Property here is often under environmental easements, strictly protected. I chose this location specifically for that legal security. Something was bothering me. The timing. You know how she is, Dad. The desperation in Travis's voice. And Joyce. At family gatherings, I think she's spoken directly to me maybe 3 times. She was always staring at her phone, always somewhere else. But Lucas, that boy shouldn't pay for the mess his parents made. I made coffee. A rich roast from a place on Main Street called Daily Donuts, where I'd had breakfast yesterday. You know how she is, Dad. The owner, a woman named Ruth, had welcomed me like an old neighbor. You bought the old Henderson place, she said. That's a good spot. You'll love it. I'd also met my neighbor, Bob Davidson, a retired lawyer, pushing 70. He'd shaken my hand and offered to show me the best hiking trails. We sat on his porch for an hour. He mentioned how Colorado property law was designed to protect homeowners, especially retirees. That if you knew what you were doing, there were ways to secure your assets. The coffee burned my tongue, but I barely noticed. 10 days, Travis had said. He was coming on the 17th. That gave me over a week to figure out what was really happening. Because in 40 years of construction, dealing with contractors, attorneys, city officials, punchers, officials, permits, and building codes, I'd learned one vital lesson. When someone slow down and read the fine something, you have to slow down and read the fine print. I thought about calling Travis back, asking for details on the mortgage, the bank, the timeline. But something stopped me. I just sent a simple text. Let's talk when you get here. I'll do what I can to help, because I would help. I always did. That's what a father does. But I'd also spent 40 years learning how to keep buildings from collapsing, how to protect what's valuable, and how to spot the rot in the foundation before the whole structure falls. The sun climbed higher. The mountains watched, ancient and patient. I stood and climbed higher. I stood in my cabin, my coffee, feeling fully processed yet, feeling the weight of a decision I hadn't fully processed yet. Help my son, protect my grandson, and risk losing everything I'd worked for, or do what I'd done for 40 years. Take a breath, inspect the structure, and make sure I understood the situation completely before making any promises. Travis said he was coming on the 17th with a real estate agent named Darren. That gave me time. Time to think, time to plan, and time to make sure that whatever I signed, whatever I agreed to, it would be on my terms. Because loving your family doesn't mean being a fool. Being a good father doesn't mean being a stepping stone. I'd learned that lesson from Travis a little too late. You know how she is, Dad. Maybe it was time to teach him a lesson in return. The mountains didn't answer. They never do. But they've seen plenty of people come here looking for peace, only to find that sometimes you have to fight to keep it. I took a sip of coffee and started making calls. The next 3 days crawled by like a wounded animal. I couldn't settle. I couldn't unpack the rest of the boxes or enjoy the view I'd spent my life savings on. You know how she is, Dad. Instead, I spent hours on the phone with Travis, trying to piece together the truth. Every conversation left me more confused than the last. It's complicated, Dad, he kept saying. You know how she is, Dad. The mortgage just got behind some unexpected expenses. You know how it is. But I didn't know. That was the problem. Travis worked as a sales manager for a car group in Denver. He made good money. Joyce worked in marketing at an agency downtown. They lived in an upscale neighborhood near 6th Avenue. No extravagant expenses. Where was the money going? You know how she is, Dad. How much are we talking about? I asked during our second call. A long silence followed, making my heart sink. The arrears are about $43,000. You know how she is, Dad. $43,000 behind on a mortgage. How do you let it get that far before asking for help? Travis, this. I cut myself off. Getting angry wouldn't help Lucas. Fine. Tell me about the mortgage process. What exactly does Darren need me to do? He'll explain everything when we get there. Just basic paperwork, quick and clean. His voice sounded forced and chipper. You won't lose anything, Dad, I promise. It's just to show the bank we have assets. Once we clear the balance, we'll take the lien off. It's simple. Nothing about this felt simple. That evening, Joyce called. It was the first time she'd called me directly in 2 years. Clifton, I wanted to thank you. Her voice dripped with something I couldn't name. It was honey, or poison disguised as honey. What you're doing for us. For Lucas, it means everything. Travis is too proud to say how important this is. Joyce, I'm doing this for my grandson. You understand that, right? Of course. Family first. That's what matters. She paused. You know, we've been under so much pressure. Travis has been working so hard just to get by. Sometimes things just spiral, you know? I didn't know. In 40 years, I'd never missed a mortgage payment, never skipped a utility bill, never let my problems become someone else's crisis. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I asked, how is Lucas taking all this? He doesn't know a thing. Kids shouldn't have to worry about adult problems. She laughed lightly. Actually, he's been asking about you. Wants to know when he can come visit the cabin. Maybe this summer? He's welcome anytime, I said. You're so generous, Clifton. Travis is lucky to have a father like you. The call ended. I sat on the deck, watching the sun set behind the peaks, that word echoing in my head. Generous. Was I generous, or just easily manipulated? You know how she is, Dad? I thought about the $120,000 for Travis's tuition at Colorado State. He changed his major 3 times, turning a 4-year degree into 5.5. You know how she is, Dad. I paid every semester without a word of complaint. The $35,000 for the wedding at the Ritz-Carlton in Denver. Joyce wanted everything perfect. Ice sculptures, a premium bar, a destination bachelor party in Vegas. I wrote the check, telling myself it was an investment in their happiness. The $25,000 loan for their down payment 7 years ago. Travis said he'd pay me back in 2 years. I'm still waiting. At this point, I'd stopped asking. Families don't keep score, right? Wrong. Apparently, families do keep score. You know how she is, Dad. They just calculate it differently than I do. By the 3rd day, I had every document related to my cabin organized. Purchase agreement, title insurance, property survey, and the Summit County assessment report showing the cabin's value at $498,000, even higher than when I bought it. You know how she is, Dad, thanks to the market boom and some updates I'd already started. This place had good bones. Original 1997 timber frame, but I could see how well the previous owners had maintained it. New roof 2 years ago, updated electrical. In the mountain real estate market, how she is, a property like this would only appreciate. Losing this would ruin me financially. At 65, I couldn't start over. This was my retirement, my nest egg, my future. But Lucas, 10 years old, my grandson. The child who would still hug me without an embarrassment, who would ask about my restoration projects as if they were the most fascinating things in the world. You know how she is, Dad. who wanted to save dolphins even though he'd never seen an ocean. What kind of grandfather would I be if I let him lose his home? My neighbor Bob stopped by on the fourth day, bringing some of his homemade elk jerky. "You know how she is, Dad. Getting settled all right?" he asked, his eyes scanning the unopened boxes in my living room. "A bit distracted," I admitted. "Family business." His expression changed. Maybe it was the lawyer's intuition. "Everything okay?" I found myself explaining it to him. Not all of it. I wasn't ready to voice my suspicions aloud yet. But enough. "You know how she is, Dad. About Travis's situation, the mortgage, the 10-day deadline." Bob chewed his jerky and listened carefully. When I finished, he was silent for a long time. "Do you know about life estates?" he finally asked vaguely. "Property law isn't my specialty, but you might want to look into it. And environmental easements. Colorado has specific protections for retirees who might be vulnerable to financial exploitation, especially from family members." He looked me straight in the eye, not saying explicitly that this is what was happening. Just, "It's always good to know more." After he left, I sat there ruminating on his words. Financial exploitation from family members. The phrase felt like acid. I thought. No, he's desperate, not malicious. There's a difference. "You know how she is, Dad." But the sound of Joyce's voice on the phone played over in my head, that sweetness, that gratitude. Everything about it felt rehearsed. I opened my laptop and started searching. Life estates, homestead exemptions, property protection under Colorado law. The more I read, the more I understood what Bob was hinting at. Ways to protect yourself, legal shields, safety nets. "You know how she is, Dad." But using them meant I didn't trust my own son. It meant I believed he might actually be trying to take everything I had. As night fell, the temperature plummeted, and the cabin creaked around me. Through the window, the stars emerged over the mountains. Sharp, cold, and infinite. I thought of Lucas's laugh. I thought of Travis before he met Joyce. I thought of Travis before met Joyce the child, before money became more important than relationships. I thought of every sacrifice I'd made, every check I'd written, every time I'd put their needs before my own. I made a decision. I would sign the papers. I would trust my son. I would help my grandson. But I would also spend the next few days learning every regulation regarding property law in Summit County, just in case. Not because I didn't trust Travis, but because my 40 years in construction had taught me a fundamental truth. Hope for the best, but always foundation. Just in case. 2 days later, I needed to run for groceries. 2 days later, I needed to run for groceries. The cabin pantry was still mostly empty. I'd been living on coffee and Bob's elk jerky. It was time to stock up. I drove down the mountain into Breckenridge, windows down, the scent of pine flooding the truck. For the first time since Travis's call, I felt almost normal. Colorado law, the research, put my mind at ease. Colorado law protects homeowners in surprising ways. Life estate deeds, homestead declarations. Even if the worst happened, I had options. Trust, but verify. That was my new motto. The city market was on the south end of Main Street, but on the way, I saw Mountain Java and decided to get some caffeine before shopping. The cafe was housed in a converted Victorian home, all exposed brick and reclaimed wood. My kind of style. You know how she is, Dad. The architect in me appreciated the restoration work someone had done here. The original crown molding, refinished hardwood floors. The modern fixtures didn't clash with the historical elements. There were about a dozen people scattered around inside. I ordered a large dark roast from a barista with purple hair and multiple lip piercings. While I waited, I looked for a seat. You know how she is, Dad. Most tables were taken, but a booth in the corner was free, partially hidden by an ornamental partition made of old weathered barn wood. Perfect. You know how she is, Dad. I sat down with my coffee and my phone to check emails. Behind me, on the other side of the partition, two women were talking, loud enough to be clearly heard. I didn't mean to I didn't mean to eavesdrop. The partition just wasn't very soundproof. Then I heard my name. Clifton really used all his money to buy this cabin. It was Joyce's voice, the exact same honeyed tone from our phone call. Travis says it's worth about $500,000, maybe more. Once the old man signs the papers, we wait a month, sell it, clear out Travis's mess, and there'll be plenty left over. My hand froze in midair, the coffee inches from my lips. Wait, I thought this was about a bank foreclosure? The other woman, younger, sounded uncertain. You didn't say the bank was taking your house? Joyce laughed. A real, audible laugh. Please, that was just the story we told Clifton. Needed a little drama, you know? Make him feel guilty. The grandson angle really got him hooked. She paused. We aren't losing the house. We're just drowning in Travis's poker debts. $85,000. My husband just can't quit online gambling. His paycheck can't even cover the minimum payments now. Joyce, her friend sounded uncomfortable. This is really manipulative. It's about survival, Rachel. We're struggling, while Clifton has been sitting on his pension for years. This cabin was supposed to be ours from the beginning. Since he let Travis grow up in a place that had almost nothing, he owes it to him. Something cold crystallized in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Piercing, just absolute piercing clarity. What about the mortgage story? Won't he find out? There is no mortgage. This is a straight sale. We already have a buyer. He'd laughed about it. A tech guy from California who wants a mountain getaway. Travis's friend, Darren, is handling all the paperwork. As soon as Clifton signs the deed over, we're done. You know how she is, Dad. The old man will be back in some apartment in Denver before he even knows what happened. That was Joyce. I don't know if this is right. Don't be so dramatic. The ice in her cup clinked. Probably an iced latte. Joyce always ordered those. Clifton has had a lifetime to make money. We're in our prime. We deserve this. I sat perfectly still. Years of site inspections had taught me patience. When you find structural damage, you don't react immediately. You document, you analyze, you plan your response. Behind the partition, Joyce's conversation shifted to vacation plans in some tropical location, once the money from the cabin came through. I stood up slowly. You know how she is, Dad. Left cash on the table and walked out. They didn't see me. I had my truck parked around the corner anyway. Sitting in the truck, I gripped the steering wheel tight. You know how she is, Dad. $43,000 behind on the mortgage. That was the know how she is. That was the number Travis gave me. But Joyce just said $85,000 in gambling debt. The numbers didn't add up because none of them were true. My son, the child I raised alone after his mother left, the boy I worked 2 jobs to put through college, looking me in the eye and lying. This wasn't a small lie or desperate exaggeration. This was a calculated, long-term conspiracy to steal everything I had, and Joyce. That phone call where she thanked me, praised me, called me generous. Pure theater. How she is, Dad. Every word was a scripted performance, meant to make me feel noble about handing over my future. I started the engine, but didn't drive away. Not yet. You know how she is, Dad. My brain was mapping the timeline. Travis called 8 days ago. said he was coming on the 17th. That gave them time to find a buyer, arrange the sale, and make everything look legal. Darren, the real estate agent, wasn't there to help with mortgage documents. He was there to assist with a theft. This cabin was supposed to be ours from the beginning. Joyce's words echoed. Entitlement. Pure, crystalline entitlement. I laughed about it. As if the $180,000 I'd given Travis over the years wasn't enough. As if the fruits of my 40 years of labor were theirs by default. I thought of Lucas, my grandson. They were using him as bait, knowing I would do anything to protect that child, while Lucas probably didn't know a thing. 10 years old, innocent. You know how she is, Dad, while his parents were plotting to clean his grandfather out. That was when the anger arrived. Not a hot, explosive anger, but a cold, precise one. The kind of anger that can build foundations and repair structures. The kind of anger that can formulate a plan. I drove back to the cabin slowly, carefully, obeying every speed limit sign, thinking. Travis had underestimated me. They both had. You know how she is, Dad. They thought I was a naive retiree, too old to fight back. They forgot, or never knew, who I actually was. 40 years in building restoration meant every building inspector along the Front Range of Colorado. I had restored historic buildings worth tens of buildings, historic zoning laws, buildings, preservation complex zoning laws, preservation societies, and landmark commissions. I knew how to build things, and that meant I knew how to protect them. Bob's words from our conversation resurfaced. Life estates, environmental easements, protections for vulnerable retirees. At the time, I researched them just for insurance. Now, they were weapons. Back home, I took out my phone and found the number I needed. Stephen Marks, attorney. You know how she is, Dad. We'd worked together on the Brown Palace restoration, dealing with deed restrictions and historical preservation requirements. His mind was sharp. You know how she is, Dad, and his work ethic with bubblegum. If anyone could help me protect my property while teaching my son a lesson, it was Stephen. He answered on the second ring. Clifton Woods. Haven't heard from you in months. How's retirement? You know how she is, Dad. A bit complicated, I said. I need legal assistance, family matters. How fast can you draft a life estate deed for my mountain property? If we move fast, a day or two. A pause. What's going on? I told him everything. The phone call, the fake foreclosure, the conversation I overheard at Mountain Java, the gambling debt, the fake mortgage, the buyer already lined up. You know how she is, Dad. Stephen listened without interrupting. That was the lawyer's skill. When I finished, he was silent for a few seconds. How she is, Dad. They're attempting to commit financial abuse against an elder, he said finally. Colorado takes this very seriously. We could file criminal charges. No, my voice was flat. No police, no prosecutors. I want something more elegant. Elegant? I want to secure my property in a way they cannot revoke or refute. And I want them to understand exactly what they were trying to do. I looked out at the mountains. You know how she is, Dad. At the cabin I dreamed of for 40 years. They thought I was an easy target. It's time to teach them a lesson. Stephen made a sound that might have been agreement. A life estate deed is a good start. You know how she is, Dad. I'd also suggest an environmental easement limiting the use of the property. That would make it virtually unsellable in the eyes of a developer, and a homestead declaration protecting it from creditors. Another pause. When are they arriving? The 17th. In 10 days. We'll meet tomorrow. In Denver, at my office. Oosh, Dad, we're going to make your cabin bulletproof. I hung up and sat on the deck, watching the sun track across the sky. Somewhere in Denver, Travis and Joyce were feeling smug about their clever plan. How she is, Dad, counting money they didn't have yet, planning their tropical getaway. They had no idea what was coming. And that was exactly what I wanted. Stephen's office was on the 8th floor of a glass-walled high-rise on 17th Street in downtown Denver. You know how she's modern, sleek, the kind of place that charged $400 an hour and was worth every penny. I drove down the mountain before sunrise that morning. The meeting was at 9. I arrived 20 minutes early, drinking Starbucks in the lobby, watching lawyers and paralegals move through the revolving doors. She is, Dad, these young professionals in expensive suits, carrying briefcases that probably cost more than my first car. You know how she is, Dad. It was a world away from the construction sites and restoration projects where I'd spent my life. But I knew this world too. Over 40 years, you know how she is, Dad. I'd worked with enough lawyers to understand their language, their tactics, their value. Stephen met me in the lobby himself. No assistance, no red tape, just a firm handshake and a look of understanding. You look tired, he said as we got into the elevator. Didn't sleep much. It was true. I'd spent most of the night researching Colorado property law, cross-referencing statutes, building a framework in my mind. By 3 a.m., I understood exactly what I needed. Now, you know how she is, Dad. I just needed Stephen to make it legally binding. His office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a cherrywood desk, leather chairs, and diplomas from the University of Colorado and Georgetown Law. But what caught my eye was the model on his side cabinet, a miniature of the Braunhambulis Hotel, the project we'd restored together. I keep it to remind myself, Stephen said, following my gaze. It's the best project I ever consulted on. You know how she is, Dad. You taught me more about historic preservation in those 6 months than law school taught me about property rights in 3 years. He gestured to a chair. Now, tell me everything. Everything. Don't leave out a single detail. I laid out the situation with absolute clarity. Travis's initial call, Joyce's thank you call, the plan I overheard at Mountain Java, the gambling debt, the fake foreclosure, the buyer they'd lined up. Stephen took on a yellow legal pad. Stephen took notes on a yellow legal, occasionally asking for clarification. Typical lawyer questions, very precise. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. The good news is, Colorado has strong laws protecting the elderly. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult is a felony. What they're attempting, fraudulent inducement, elder abuse, perhaps even deceptive theft, will have severe consequences. I told you, no criminal charges. Understood. But you need to understand the legal background. He tapped his pen against the pad. What your son and daughter-in-law are attempting, if successful, would be a crime. You know how she is, Dad. That tells me how to structure your defense. We aren't just going to protect your property. We're going to make it legally impossible for them to profit from their scheme. How? Stephen stood up and walked to the window. A 3-tier strategy. First, a life estate deed. You transfer legal ownership to yourself as a life tenant. You know how she is, Dad. You retain the right to live there until you pass away, and the property cannot be sold without your express written consent. Second, an environmental easement. Colorado loves these. We restrict the property's development rights. No expansions, no demolitions, no major structural changes. You know how she is. It makes the property far less valuable to a buyer and virtually impossible to flip. Third, a homestead declaration per Colorado Revised Statutes 3841, which protects the property from creditor claims up to $250,000. You know how she is, Dad. Even if they managed to gain control, they couldn't use it to pay off Travis's gambling debts. I processed the information. So, you know how she is, Dad. Even if I signed the property away tomorrow, the life estate means I still live there. The easement means they can't easily develop or sell it, and the homestead declaration means their creditors can't touch it. He returned to his desk. But here's the best part. We backdate all the documents. Backdate? Legally. Notarized on the accurate date, but filed as executed before Travis called, say, a week ago. This establishes your intent to protect your property independent of their scheme. It removes any argument that you only did this in response to their request for help. Clever. Cold and clever. Can we legally do that? Absolutely. As long as we are honest about the date of signature versus the date of filing. We prepare the documents now, sign and notarize now, but the effective date is prior. You know how she is, Dad. Under Colorado recording statutes, it's perfectly legal. He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. I need the details on the property. Legal description, tax assessor's parcel number, existing encumbrances. I had everything. The deed, title insurance, survey, tax documents. You know how she is, Dad. I spread them out on the table like architectural blueprints. For the next 2 hours, we worked. Stephen drafted terms. I reviewed, suggested edits, and checked details. The life estate deed was 12 pages. The environmental easement was longer, detailing the applicable restrictions. The homestead declaration was simpler, just 3 pages of statutory language. Who holds the easement? I asked. Don't we need a land trust? The Colorado Headwaters Land Trust. I've worked with them before. They'll accept the easement as a donation. You get a tax break, and they get another protected property in Summit County. A win-win. He looked up at me. It also means any buyer has to deal with the land trust. Good luck to them explaining to a buyer why they're selling a property, an environmental trust. By noon, just put in IMI, had the drafts. By noon, we had the drafts. Stephen arranged for a notary for the afternoon, which his paralegal could handle. Then we discussed the valuation. You said the cabin is worth more now than when you bought it? Stephen asked. I think so. Original timber frame, professionally maintained, great location. Plus, I've done some interior restoration. You know how she is, Dad. Those authentic artisan details are rare these days. Get it appraised. You know how she is, Dad. A professional appraiser, not just a market analysis. If the property is worth significantly more than your purchase price, it strengthens our position, proving this was a savvy investment, not the last asset of a desperate retiree. I called an appraiser I knew in the restoration field. Patricia Henderson specialized in historic and unique properties. She could inspect the cabin in 3 days and have a report within a week. The timing was perfect. I'd have plenty of ammunition before Travis arrived. You know how she is, Dad. The notary arrived at 2:30 p.m. A small, efficient woman. We signed everything. The documents Stephen prepared were effective from the week before Travis called. You know how she is, Dad. But after I'd purchased the cabin, everything was legal, documented, and bulletproof. You know how she is, Dad. These will be delivered to the Summit County Clerk and Recorder's office tomorrow, Stephen said, handing me a copy in a leather folder. 48 hours for processing. By the time your Sonasket-Ein arrives, these will be public record. Irrevocable. I held the folder, feeling the weight of it. This feels like overkill. You know how she is, Dad. It's an appropriate counterpunch. Stephen's expression turned serious. Safdan. Clifton, your son tried to use your grandson as bait to manipulate you. His wife discussed your cognitive abilities as if you were a 3-year-old. You know how she is, Dad. They need to understand that underestimating someone's intelligence is a mistake that comes with a price. Outside, Denver stretched out under a cloudless sky. You know how she is, Dad. I drove back to Breckenridge slowly, the folder on the passenger seat. I stopped at Bob's on the way. He opened the door, wearing his reading glasses, holding a paperback. "Got a minute?" I asked. Over coffee on his porch, I explained what I'd learned and the steps I'd taken. Bob listened with the rapt attention of a lawyer who'd spent decades in court. When I finished, he smiled. Not a happy smile, but a satisfied one. Life estate? That's perfect. Your son is about to step right into a legal mousetrap. He took a sip of his coffee. You know what happens after he finds out, right? He'll be furious, not just furious. He'll feel betrayed. Considering what he planned to do, that's rich. But that doesn't matter to him. Bob looked into my eyes. Are you ready to face that? Was I ready? Travis. I thought of Travis at 8 helping me sand baseboards on a job. At 15, moody and distant. At 25, reaching out for money again. At 38, plotting to rob me. I'm ready, I said. Back at the cabin, I organized everything into a folder. Life estate deed, environmental easement, homestead declaration. All ready with copies. Waiting for Travis and Joyce. Stephen jokingly called it a welcome package. Stephen, their clever plan was dead melting battle. Proof that their clever plan was dead on arrival. They were due in 6 days. 6 days for me to finish the paperwork, get the appraisal, review my strategy, and prepare for their reaction. 6 days until Travis realized as stupid they thought. The days flew by in a blur of preparation. Patricia Henderson came with her camera and tape measure, spending 3 hours documenting every detail of the cabin. The original timber frame, the hand-carved corbels, you know how she is, Dad, and the period-correct hardware I'd installed myself. Her report came back at $520,000, $45,000 higher than I'd paid. Stephen was right. The appraisal added weight to everything. Travis texted twice, casual check-ins. Still on for the 17th, and really grateful you're doing this, Dad. Every message felt like sandpaper on my skin. I simply replied, see you then, the 17th arrived. I got up early, made coffee, and laid the folder on the dining table, everything organized. The life estate deed with the Summit County seal. The environmental easement with the signature of the Fano Cow, Colorado Headwaters Land Trust. The homestead declaration. Patricia's appraisal. All legally filed, publicly recorded, and binding. They arrived at 2 p.m. 3 cars. Travis's Audi in the lead, followed by Joyce's Lexus and a silver BMW. Probably the real estate agent. I watched them park from the window. Travis stepped out in khakis and a polo, looking like he was headed to a country club. Joyce stepped out in designer sunglasses, looking down at her phone. The third man, tall, in his early 40s, wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. Travis spotted me on the deck and waved. All smiles. Dad, thanks for doing this. They walked up the steps. Travis hugged me. It felt wrong, like hugging a stranger wearing my son's mask. Joyce kissed my cheek, her perfume stifling. Such a beautiful place, Clifton. You have such good taste. The agent extended a hand. Darren Kowalski, Summit Real Estate Group. Good to meet you, Mr. Woods. Travis has said great things about you. I bet he had. Come on in, I said. Calm and gentle, drawing on 40 years of dealing with difficult contractors and demanding clients. Never show weakness. Never tip your hand too early. They sat at my dining table. Darren opened his briefcase immediately, pulling out documents. This should be simple, he started. All professional efficiency. We're establishing a mortgage agreement using the property as collateral. Basic deed of trust, temporary arrangement. Once Travis is current on his mortgage payments, we'll file the release. It's a very straightforward process, done all the time. Joyce leaned forward, earnest. We really don't know how to thank you. Lucas has been so worried. You know how she is, Dad, even though we tried to hide it from him. This gives us breathing room. Travis twos. Travis nodded vigorously. The bank wouldn't communicate at all. You're buying us time. I let them talk, watching Darren spread the papers across the table. I noticed how he avoided my eyes when explaining the terms and contingencies, noticed the way Joyce's foot tapped under the table. Nervous energy and anticipation. The Birgi Menschen som. I noticed Travis' forced casualness and the way he kept checking his watch. So, if you could just sign right here, Darren said, pushing the papers toward me. And here, and initial here. We file these, and you've saved your son's family. I didn't reach for the pen. Instead, I picked up my folder. Before we proceed, there's something you should see. The atmospheres in the room changed. Subtle, like the drop in pressure before a storm. Like the drop in pressure before first document. I opened the folder and took out the first document. This is a life estate deed, filed with Summit County on. I checked the date, the 8th, before Travis called me. I pushed it across the table. It transfers ownership to me as a life tenant. It means I retain the right to live here until I pass away. You know how she is, Dad. More importantly, the property cannot be sold without my express written consent. Darren picked it up. Read it. His expression went from professional confidence to professional concern in about 5 seconds. And I took out the environmental easement. This restricts the development rights on the property. No expansions, no demolitions, no major structural changes. You know how she is, Dad. It's filed with the Colorado Headwaters Land Trust, permanent and irrevocable. It makes this property unattractive to buyers who want to flip or develop it. Joyce's foot stopped, tapping. And this, the Homestead Declaration, per Colorado Revised Statutes 3841, protects the property from creditor claims up to $250,000. You know how she is, Dad. It means even if someone did gain control of the property, it couldn't be used to pay off debts. Travis went pale. Not dramatically, just a gradual loss of color. It would have been funny if it weren't my own son sitting there realizing his conspiracy had collapsed. Finally, I placed Patricia's appraisal on top of everything. A professional appraisal shows the property is worth $520,000, well above my purchase price, which supported my decision to protect it legally. Silence. Thick enough to be cut with the utility knife I'd used on my moving boxes yesterday. Darren cleared his throat. Mr. Woods, you know how she is, Dad. This makes the mortgage arrangement very complicated. With these restrictions, there is no mortgage arrangement. My voice was steady, matter of fact. Because there is no mortgage foreclosure, right, Travis? My son's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. Joyce tried to salvage the situation. I don't know what you're implying. Mountain Java, I interrupted. 10 days ago, about 11:30 a.m. You know how she is, Dad. You were talking to your friend Rachel, discussing how you plan to sell my cabin to pay off Travis's $85,000 in poker debts. I turned to Travis. Funny, that's almost double dues, Dad. Double the number you gave me for the mortgage arrears. The color Travis had lost came flooding back into his cheeks in bright red patches. You know how she is, Dad. The composure Joyce was carefully maintaining shattered like thin ice. "You know how she is, Dad. You eavesdropped on us," she said, her voice rising. "I was just getting coffee. You were the ones being loud." I looked at Darren, who was now motionless. "What about you? What commission were you expecting? 15,000? 20? Must be disappointing to realize the property you plan to flip is legally untouchable." Darren gathered his papers clumsily. "I think there's been some I think there's been some misunderstanding. I was just trying to help. You were assisting in financial abuse against an elderly person. In Colorado, that's a felony. You know how she is, Dad. I let the sentence hang in the air for a moment. I won't press charges. Not against any of you. But I wanted to make it very clear what just almost happened here." Travis found his voice. "Dad, listen to me." "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "You listen to me. For 40 years, I've given you everything. College tuition, 120,000. Your wedding, 35,000. The down payment on your house, 25,000, which you never paid back. You know how she is, Dad, and the way you thank me is to lie to my bait and bring a real estate agent into my home to help you steal." I stood up. "So, how she is, Dad. What's going to happen next is this. You're leaving now, all of you. And then, you're going to think very carefully about whether your relationship with me is still worth repairing." Joyce grabbed her purse. "This is insane. Travis, tell him." But Travis wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I saw something other than entitlement in his eyes. Fear. He finally understood. He'd laughed about it. His old man wasn't the easy target they'd imagined, and whatever happened next would be entirely on my terms, not theirs. They left without another word. Darren practically ran to his BMW. Joyce stormed toward her Lexus, her heels clicking on the wood deck like gunfire. Travis lingered for a moment, his mouth working, as if he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Eventually he turned and walked away. The engine of the Audi roared to life, louder than usual. I watched their cars disappear down the wilderness road. You know how she is. The dust kicked up like a trail of accusations. Then, I poured myself a Maker's Mark, the good stuff I only drank on special occasions, and sat on the deck. The mountains looked the same as they had this morning, indifferent, eternal, exactly what I needed. An hour later, Bob appeared through the trees between our properties. "Saw the caravan leave," he said. "Short meeting. Very short." I handed him the whiskey bottle. He took it. "How'd they take it?" "Just as you expected. Shock, denial, and then retreat." I swirled my glass. The real estate agent looked like someone had stolen his commission. Though I suppose I did. Bob chuckled quietly. "That life estate deed is a work of art. Simple, elegant, and completely bulletproof. Your lawyer is a sharp one. 40 years, dear years of dealing with lawyers taught me who's competent and who's just expensive." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink. Eventually, Bob went home, leaving me alone with my thoughts, my bourbon, and my legally fortified cabin. The peace lasted only 3 days. Then the dominoes began to fall. Bob stopped by again, this time with news. "Saw something interesting in the King Soopers parking lot this morning. Your daughter-in-law was in the Quality Auto Group lot, seemingly having a very public argument with your son. Lots of gestures. She drove away fast enough to leave rubber on the pavement. I could picture it. You know how she is. Joyce's meticulously maintained image shattering in a grocery store parking lot while Travis's coworkers watched from behind the dealership glass. A public, spectacular scene. She is, Dad. Half the parking lot must have heard her screaming about gambling and lies. Bob's expression was neutral, but I caught a hint of satisfaction. In a small town, news travels fast. It did travel fast. Over the next week, I learned through various channels. Bob's wife knew someone who knew Joyce's friend Rachel. You know how she is, Dad, who apparently felt guilty about the whole thing. That Joyce was on the verge of a breakdown. The failure of the cabin scheme was bad enough. But then, creditors started calling, collection agencies, attorneys representing online gambling houses. Travis owed money to multiple sites, some of them offshore. Calls came at all hours, to their home phone, Joyce's cell, Travis's work. Fate, Dads. The last one was the breaking point at Quality Auto Group. Travis's boss, a man named Richard Connolly, apparently valued discretion. A sales manager's. Dad, aisles manager shouldn't have debt collectors calling the showroom demanding payment on $20,000 gambling debts. It was know how she is, Dad. It was bad for the dealership's reputation, bad for customer confidence. Travis got a warning, then another. Then he was suspended pending investigation. Corporate speak for. We're collecting the reasons to fire you. Joyce filed for divorce on Wednesday. I heard this from Stephen, who had his ear to the ground on legal developments. Your daughter-in-law hired Baker and Associates. They aren't cheap. The grounds for divorce are reconcilable differences, but I heard from a paralegal friend that the real issue is financial infidelity. Apparently, this Travis had been hiding the true extent of his gambling from her until recently being when their plan to steal my cabin failed. Exactly. Stephen sounded amused. You know how she also asking for sole custody of your grandson, arguing that Travis's addiction proves he's unstable. A smart move. Protects the child, makes Travis look worse. Lucas. I tried to keep from thinking about him. A 10-year-old boy caught between imploding parents. That boy deserved a much better life than this. Travis called me on a Friday night. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity won. Travis? Dad. His voice sounded hollow, filled with defeat. Nothing like the confident tone from 2 weeks ago when he walked into my cabin thinking he could take my future. You know how she is, Dad. I know I don't have the right to ask you, but you don't. I kept my tone calm, objective. You have no right to ask me for anything. Joyce filed for divorce. You know how she is, Dad. The company is threatening to fire me. Creditors are calling every day. A pause. I need help. Please. Like you used to help me. We can forget this whole misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? The word tasted bitter. You tried to rob me, Travis. You lied about your grandson being homeless. You brought a real estate agent to my house to help you steal. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime. One I chose not to press charges for. I was desperate. The debt was crushing me, and I just thought, you thought I was too old and too stupid to fight back. You know how she is, Dad. I stood up and walked to the window. In the twilight, the mountains had turned purple. You thought 40 years of building restoration meant I didn't understand property law. You underestimated me because that was convenient for you. Dad, please. I'm your son, and I'm your father, which means the best help I can give you right now is to let you solve your own problems. I softened my tone a little. Not a lot, just enough to be human. Travis, you're 38. You have a gambling addiction. You've racked up $85,000 in debt. None of that is my responsibility to fix. Maybe it's time you grew up. He hung up. Or I did. Hard to remember. The following week brought more fallout. Joyce, seemingly as a tactical move, sent a letter to several family members explaining the situation. In her version, Travis was the villain, the gambler, the liar, the manipulator who tried to defraud his own aging father. She positioned herself as the misled victim. You know how she is, Dad, now bravely protecting Lucas from his father's instability. Smart, ruthless, but smart. She controlled the narrative before Travis could, gaining sympathy while further isolating him. The letter reached me through my cousin in Boulder. She called to express concern. "Clifton, is this true? Travis tried to attack your cabin?" "It's complicated," I said. Diplomatic code for, "Yes, but I don't want to discuss it." Yes. News spread. News went through our family network, like dry tinder. By the end of July, everyone knew. Travis was a pariah. Joyce was a sympathetic figure escaping an addict. And I was an aging victim targeted by my own son. I hated that last part. Victim implied weakness. Implied I hadn't seen it coming, hadn't been prepared, hadn't won. But family politics weren't worth fighting. Let them think what they wanted. What mattered was that Travis's world was collapsing just as it should have. Natural consequences, logical ends, behavior leading to outcomes. I felt no guilt over this. Only a strange, cold satisfaction. And in the quiet moments when doubt crept in, I thought of Lucas, thought of protecting him, thought of the lesson Travis was being taught. Thought of the lesson Travis was that boy from having a father who might have eventually saved that boy who thought manipulation and theft were acceptable ways to live. Sometimes ups. Sometimes mercy looks like punishment. Sometimes love requires letting people fall. The mountains agreed. They'd seen it all before. You know how she is, Dad. August brought daily afternoon thunderstorms that rolled through the mountains. You know how she is, Dad. I was refinishing the deck, finding things to keep my hands busy while Travis's world continued its earth-shattering collapse when I heard tires on gravel. Not Bob's truck. You know how she is, Dad. The engine sounded different. I looked out the window and saw Travis's Audi, dirtier than I remembered. The passenger door was dented. You know how she is, Dad. The car that had once been flawless now bore all the signs of neglect. He climbed out slowly. Thin. When had he gotten so thin? His polo, once loosely on his frame, the once confident gait gone, replaced by a slouched, defeated posture. I met him on the deck. No invitation inside. Not yet. Dad. His voice cracked on the word. Can we talk, please? Just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I nodded toward a chair. We sat. Silence stretched between us, a chasm. How she is. I've lost everything, he said finally. In the divorce, Joyce took the house. Her lawyer found a clause I didn't understand. The gambling debts are killing me. You know how she is, Dad, even with a payment plan. I'm working at a rental car counter at the airport now, making 15 an hour. He looked at his hands. I know I don't deserve your help. You know how she is, Dad. I know what I tried to do is unforgivable. But, Dad, I'm drowning and I don't know how to fix it. No manipulation this time. No calculated plea. Just pure desperation. The armor had finally cracked. I let the silence sit, watching an eagle circle overhead, hunting. Finally. Travis, do you know what I did for 40 years? He blinked at the question. You were an architect. Did restoration work. You know how she is, Dad. That's the title. But do you know what I actually accomplished? I stood, walked inside, retrieved a box from my office, and sat back down, opening it. It was full of photos, certificates, and articles my career made manifest. This is the Brown Palace Hotel. I handed him a photo. Historic building, grand lobby, restored to its 19th century glory. I led the restoration team in 2012. $15 million project. We won the Preservation Excellence Award from the National Register of Historic Places. Another photo. The Molly Brown house. You know how she is, Dad? I personally rebuilt the third-floor railing using period-correct techniques. Took me 8 months to get it perfect. You know how she is, Dad? Travis looked at the photos as if he'd never seen them before. Maybe he never had. I'd never forced him to look. 2016. The State Capitol Dome restoration. Gold leaf work. I consulted on the metallurgy and application process. Met with the governor 3 times. I pulled out a framed certificate. The 2018 Colorado Preservation Award, the highest honor in the state for historic buildings. Presented at a ceremony with 200 professionals, business leaders, judges, and politicians. He'd laughed about it. You know how she is, Dad? I handed the certificate to him and watched his eyes scan the ornate calligraphy, the official seals, and the signatures. I don't understand, he said. Why didn't you ever tell me? I told you plenty of times. You just never asked. I pulled out more photos. This is the lieutenant governor at the Capitol ribbon cutting. You know how this is me with the head of the Colorado Historical Society. This is me speaking at the Denver Architecture Conference in 2019. I leaned back. Travis, I know every major contractor along the Front Range, every building inspector, every lawyer who handles zoning. I've worked with judges who specialize in property law. You know how she is, Dad? When you walked into my cabin with that real estate agent and planned to steal my property, you weren't facing a confused retiree. You know how she is, Dad. You were facing someone who has spent 40 years navigating the most complex property deals in Colorado. His face went pale again. I was getting used to the look. But you never. He struggled for the words. You always seemed so ordinary. Ordinary jobs. Ordinary houses. You drive in 10-year-old truck. Because the money wasn't the point. I put the photos back in the box. I chose projects for their historical significance, not their profitability. I could have made 3 times as much money building luxury condos for developers. But I wanted to preserve history, not destroy it for a profit margin. I met his eyes, and I wanted you to respect me for who I was, as a person, as a father. You know how she is, Dad, not for my achievements or connections, so I downplayed them, kept them quiet. I never knew. His voice held genuine shock. For all these years, I thought you were just an average guy who fixed old houses. I am an average guy who fixes old houses. It's just that the buildings happen to be incredibly important, and the work requires a level of expertise few people have. I closed the box. When you called and asked for the cabin as collateral, I knew instantly that something was wrong. People in my line of work don't make rash decisions about property. You know how she is, Dad. We do research, we verify, and we use every legal tool available to protect our assets. Travis sat motionless, processing the information. You know how she is, Dad, recalculating everything he thought he knew about his father. Environmental easements, he said slowly. Life, estate, deeds. That wasn't just luck or good advice. You knew exactly what you were doing. From the moment I overheard Joyce at the cafe, I gave him a faint smile. You underestimated me because I let you. That was my mistake. I taught you that competence was something to hide, not celebrate. I know how she is, Dad. I made myself look insignificant so you wouldn't feel pressured. I am so sorry. His voice cracked. Not just about the cabin. Because I never really saw you. You know how she is, Dad, because I treated you like an ATM, and because I brought Joyce into your home to lie to your face. Tears were streaming down his face now. A 38-year-old man, crying like a child. I was so arrogant, so entitled. I thought I deserved everything you had. just because I was your son. I never earned a single thing for myself. I wanted to be cold, to keep my walls up, but there was something about his collapse that felt sincere. Prazup, real remorse, not tactical tears. What do you want from me, Travis? Nothing. He wiped his eyes. I don't deserve anything. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did, who you are, and what I threw away. He stood up. Thanks for showing me these. I should go. Sit down. My voice carried an order. He sat. I said I wasn't giving you money. I meant it, but I can give you something else. What? A path forward, on my terms. I leaned in. 1. You seek help, real help. Gamblers Anonymous, therapy, weekly records. 2. You start making it right. Small payments to your creditors. $500 a month to me. You know how she is, Dad. To pay off that $25,000 loan. A formal, legally binding repayment plan. 3. You rebuild your relationship with Lucas. Not because the court requires it. You know how she is, Dad, but because he deserves a better father than the one you showed him. Travis nodded, desperate to agree. 4. I stared at him. A public admission to the family about what you tried to do, full accountability. No excuses, no justifications, just the truth. I will. All of it. He meant it. I could hear it. Then we start over. A new relationship built on honesty and respect, not money or obligation. You know how she is, Dad. Are you willing to do that? Yes. There wasn't a hint of hesitation. We shook hands. A bit awkward, a bit tentative, but real. Travis kept his word. The first payment arrived a week later. You know how she is, Dad, a $500 check with a memo line. Payment $150. Loan repayment, I deposited it into a separate account. Stephen helped me set up, properly documented for tax purposes. Legal, binding. You know how she is, Dad? Real consequences coupled with real responsibility. The same day, he sent proof of his first Gamblers Anonymous meeting, a photo of a sign-in sheet with his name clearly visible. You know how she is, Dad. Then the next week, and the next. I didn't ask how felt, didn't pry for details. I just acknowledged receipt. One small step at a time. You know, the family meeting was held in late September. You know how she is, Dad? I arranged it at my cousin Sandra's home in Boulder, neutral territory, large enough for the dozen relatives who attended. You know how she is, Dad. Travis drove in from Denver, looking like he was going to be sick. Joyce arrived separately with Lucas, her expression guarded. They hadn't seen each other in weeks. You know how she is, Dad, except during supervised visitations. When Travis stood up, silence fell over Sandra's living room. Everyone knew why we were there. Joyce's letter had ensured that, but now they had to hear it from him. I tried to steal from my father. His voice was shaky but steady. Not borrow, not use as collateral. Steal. I made up a story about the house being foreclosed. I used Lucas as bait to make Dad feel guilty. You know how she is, Dad, and I planned to sell his cabin to pay off my gambling debts. You know how she is, Dad. I lost $85,000 playing online poker. Debt I hid from Joyce and everyone else. Lucas sat between Joyce and Sandra, eyes wide, too young to fully grasp it. You know how she is, Dad, but old enough to feel the weight of it. Dad caught me. He'd prepared legal protections. Life estate deeds, environmental easements, because he's much smarter than I ever gave him credit for. He spent 40 years becoming one of the most respected building restoration experts in Colorado, and I treated him like a fool. Travis's voice caught. I betrayed his trust, used my own son as a manipulation, and when it all failed, I blamed everyone but myself. Silence, heavy and suffocating. I am in therapy, attending GA, on a payment plan with creditors and working an hourly job because I destroyed my career with my own actions. He looked directly at me. You know how she is, Dad. I am working to earn back even a fraction of my father's respect. Not because I deserve it, but because maybe, eventually, I can be the kind of father Lucas deserves. Lucas started to cry, silent tears. Sandra, how she is, Dad. Sandra wrapped an arm around him. Travis looked like he wanted to walk toward his son, but knew he couldn't. Not yet. I stood and walked over to Lucas, crouching down. Hey, pal, your dad made a mistake. A big one. But he's working to fix it. That's what matters right now. Lucas nodded on my shoulder. Can Dad come to your cabin with me again? Someday. When he's ready, and when we rebuild that trust. I looked at Travis. These things take time. The meeting ended awkwardly. People drifted away with uncertain goodbyes, but a few relatives, including Sandra, pulled me aside. You handled it right, Sandra said. Tough love. It's what he needed. Joyce left without speaking to Travis, but she didn't look angry, just pensive. October brought changes. Small, incremental changes. Travis landed a job at Morrison Construction, a mid-sized firm doing commercial projects around Denver. An entry-level estimator role, $42,000 a year. A massive pay cut from his sales manager salary, but an honest job requiring math skills and attention to detail. His boss, a rugged man named Rick Morrison, knew nothing of Travis's past. He just saw a man willing to work hard and learn. I'm looking at blueprints. Travis told me during our weekly check-in, learning material costs, calculating labor hours. It's humbling, but I love it. It feels real. The GA attendance logs kept coming. 12 weeks straight, then 16. Stephen helped us formalize the loan repayment into a proper contract, $25,000 at 5% interest, $500 minimum a month, legally enforceable. Travis signed it without a word of complaint. Travis signed it without a word of divorce. Joyce still hadn't finalized the divorce. Her lawyer filed for a continuance, a stay, citing a change in circumstances. Bob's wife, through her network, heard that Joyce was watching Travis closely, looking for signs that signs that a temporaries was real rather than a temporary performance. A smart woman calculated, but maybe that calculation would work in Travis's favor now. Lucas agreed to every other weekend Jones increased. Joyce agreed to every other weekend unsupervised visits. He'd laughed about it. Travis picked him up Saturday morning, spent time in the small apartment he rented near the Denver airport, then drove him up to the cabin on Sundays. You know how she is, Dad. The three of us would have lunch, play cards, and talk about safe topics. Lucas slowly relaxed around his father. On a Sunday in mid-October, after Lucas went inside to watch TV, Travis and I sat on the deck with coffee. Joyce called me yesterday, he said, for real, not through a lawyer, asked how work was, if I was still going to my meetings. We talked for almost an hour. That's progress. She isn't taking me back, not yet, maybe never, but she said, he paused. She said, Lucas needs his fathers in his life. If I can prove I'm stable, really stable, she'll consider joint custody. Real custody, not just supervised visits. What did you say? I said I'd prove it to her, no matter how long it takes. He stared at his coffee. I miss her. Not the fantasy version I thought I married, the one who would pay for my lifestyle. The real her, the strong for anything less than what she's worth, who refuses to settle for anything less than what she's worth. She deserves better than the version of you she had in the past. Wisdom. Real wisdom from my son. Who would have thought? Keep doing the work, I said. The rest will follow, or it won't. But at least you'll be someone Lucas can respect. Because of who you are. He looked me in the eye. If you had just given me the money like before, I would have gambled it away and learned nothing. You know how she is, Dad. You forced me to hit bottom and really look at myself. I hated you for it. Now, I'm grateful. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the aspens on the mountainside turn gold. Bob waved from his deck. Travis waved back. Normal, almost calm. The neighborhood gossip that had been red hot in July and August had cooled to embers. People had moved on to newer scandals. Travis's story became old news. He'd laughed about it. You know how she is, Dad. In its place was a quieter narrative. A man who hit bottom, got help, and slowly rebuilt. Not dramatic enough to sustain interest. And that was exactly what Travis needed. A healing space where every stumble wasn't being watched by 100 cameras. By late October, I had records of continuous therapy, 19 consecutive GA meetings, 3 months of debt payments, a steady job, and an improved relationship with Lucas. It was proof, Dad. It was proof of real change, not just promises. Stephen reviewed it all with professional approval. Your son is actually doing it, sticking with it. You know how she is. That's much rarer than you'd think in cases like this. Think he'll make it? Better odds than most. Stephen closed the folder. You gave him structure, but didn't rescue him. Made the consequences real, but provided a path forward. A text intervention. Most people just can't maintain those boundaries when it's family. I thought of Joyce's laugh at Mountain Java. I thought of the fear in Travis's eyes when the scheme collapsed. And Lucas's tears at the family meeting. I thought of the second chance, earned through sweat, shames, and genuine remorse. He's my son, I said simply. I loved him enough to let him fall, and enough to help him up when he was ready to stand on his own. Outside, early snow dusted the peaks. Winter was approaching, a season of rest and preparation, and maybe, just maybe, a season where broken things could begin to heal. The invitation surprised me, Travis called. Dad, Joyce and I were wondering, could we bring Lucas and come up to the cabin? We want to talk to you properly, Joyce agreed. It was her idea, actually. His voice was nervous, hopeful. She's been watching me do everything. The meetings, the payments, the work. She said, we both owe you something. Not just an apology, but an accounting. I picked a Saturday afternoon, made my signature chili, a dish Travis loved as a boy. Set the table for 4, in the same car. That detail mattered. You know how she is, Dad. Joyce was driving Travis in the passenger seat, Lucas in the back with a backpack full of books and games. They crept out of the car, uncertain, like you know how she is, like visitors approaching sacred ground. They weren't sure if they were granted entry. Lucas ran ahead and hugged me. Grandpa, Mom says we're having a family dinner, like a real family. Just like that, pal. I ruffled his hair. You know how she is, Dad. Go get your stuff inside. The grown-ups need to talk first. He disappeared into the cabin. Travis and Joyce stood on my deck, and for the first time since the disaster began, I really looked at them. Travis, thinner but somehow healthier, his eyes clear. Joyce, less polished than before. No designer sunglasses, light makeup, real. Come in, I said. We sat at my dining table. You know how she is, Dad? The very table where I'd dismantled their conspiracy 4 months earlier. Joyce noticed. I saw a flicker of recognition cross her face. Travis took an envelope from his jacket, the 5th payment. He pushed it across. $500 every month, on time. I'll keep doing this until every cent of principal and interest is paid. I took it, and set it aside. That's not why you're here. No, Joyce spoke first. Her voice had lost the honeyed artifice. Now it was just pure, hard truth. Clifton, I need to say this. What I did, what we did, is unforgivable. You know how she is, Dad. I sat in a coffee shop, laughing about stealing from you, calling you an old man, like you were prey, not a person, not the father who sacrificed everything for Travis. Travis took over. I lied to your face. Used Lucas as leverage, brought a real estate agent into your home to help me steal, and when you brilliantly, completely protected yourself, I blamed you, called you selfish, said you ruined my life. His voice shook. But you didn't ruin my life. What you saved it. I enabled him. Why? Yet we'd become. I enabled him, Joyce continued. You know how she is, Dad. Pushed him towards you, treating you like a resource to be exploited. I resented you for being just an architect when you could have made more. I never understood that you chose meaning over profit, integrity over wealth. Qualities I claimed to value but never truly respected. A heavy silence filled with truth. Why now? I asked. What changed? I watched them. Joyce looked at Travis. 3 months. I watched him go to those meetings, work that airport job without a word of complaint, make payments he could barely afford. You know how she is, Dad. Show up for Lucas even when the court said he didn't have to. And I realized he wasn't performing. He was actually changing, becoming the man I thought I'd married. She turned to look at me. And I realized I needed to change, too. You know how she is, Dad. Stop being the woman who measured people by their bank accounts. Start being the kind of person Lucas can respect. Travis reached across the table and took her hand. A small, significant move. We aren't asking for forgiveness, he said. We don't deserve it. We are asking for a chance to prove we understand what we did. To show you with time that we've learned the lesson, that we aren't the same two people who were here in June. I looked at them. The two people who had conspired against me, who had calculated my value in property prices and commission percentages, who had underestimated me so thoroughly. They walked into a legal trap that destroyed their lives. I saw genuine remorse. He'd laughed at. Remorse bought through consequences, public humiliation, financial ruin, and the loss of everything they had taken for granted. You're right, I said. By any normal standard, what you did is unforgivable. Yet you tried to steal my retirement, my dream, the cabin I worked 40 years to buy. I paused, letting it settle. But here's what you didn't know. I could have pressed up charges. In Colorado, elder financial abuse is a felony. Stephen told me you would have faced 2 to 6 years. I chose not to. Know why? They shook their heads. You know how she is, Dad. Because punishment without an opportunity for growth is just cruelty. I wanted you to understand what you'd done, to face real consequences, and to change, or prove you couldn't. And Travis, I looked at my son, you changed. You really did. That's rare. Stephen tells me that in your situation, 90% of people don't stick it out. They promise everything, and then, in a few weeks, revert to old patterns. You didn't. You didn't. You showed up, did the work, and honored every commitment. Because you gave me a structure, Travis said. Clear expectations, no rescues, just a path and a choice. I finally chose the right one. Sod. I stood and walked to my office, retrieved something I'd kept, and returned to the table to place it between us. A framed photo. Travis at 8, covered in sawdust, helping me sand baseboards on a restoration project. We were both laughing. I've been carrying anger, I said. Righteous anger, justified anger. but anger nonetheless. I'm done with it. So, here's how this goes. I forgive you. Both of you. Not because you earned it. Though, Travis, you're working toward that, but because holding on to this would poison the time I have left with my grandson. Joyce started to cry. Silent tears, real ones. But forgiveness has boundaries, I continued. New relationship, new rules. Travis pays back the loan, no negotiation. You know how she is, Dad. If you reconcile, you both do therapy, individual and eventually couples. Never ask me for money again. No asking about my finances. No assumptions about inheritance or future help. We start. At 0. Earn trust through consistency. Build an honest relationship or build nothing at all. Understand? Understood, they said in unison. Lucas rushed in from the living room. Is dinner ready? I'm starving. The tension broke. We laughed. Genuine laughter. I served the chili. We ate on the deck, watching the sun track across the sky, turning the aspens into liquid gold. Lucas chattered about school, his dreams of being a marine biologist, the elk he'd seen last time he was here. Normal conversation. A family dinner. After dinner, Travis helped me clear the plates. Joyce took Lucas for a walk to see Bob's horses next door. In the kitchen, just the two of us, my son turned to me. Thank you, he said. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for caring enough to let me fall. Thank you for showing me who you really are. You're welcome. Now don't make me regret it. He smiled. Not a chance. Through the window, I watched Joyce and Lucas walking hand in hand down the gravel road. Watched Bob wave from his porch. Watched the mountains remain eternal and patient. My cabin, legally fortified, perfectly secure, and entirely mine. It surrounded me with the peace I had earned twice over. Once through 40 years of hard work, and once through 4 months of standing my ground. Travis had lost his career, temporarily lost his marriage, his reputation, and was saddled with $85,000 in gambling debt he would spend years paying off. You know how she is, Dad. Joyce had lost her illusion of easy gain and faced her own complicity. Both had been completely broken, but they were here now, together, doing the work. And I was here in Breckenridge, Colorado, at my cabin on 8 and 47 Wilderness Way. You know how she is, Dad. I was the master of my own future, the teacher of a harsh lesson, and a father who had finally seen his son. Clearly, justice was served, lessons were learned, and life moved on. You know how she is, the mountains witnessed it all. They always did. Long after we were gone, they would still be here, watching other families struggle and heal. Watching others understand that respect isn't given. It's earned, it's protected, and sometimes it's something you need to fight for with everything you have. I walked outside to join my family. The 4 of us stood on my deck as the sun set in fiery gold. We weren't the family the peaks in nutty gold. We weren't the family we had been before. This was something harder won, something real.